Hi Torah sisters, it's me, Amy. The title of this video is The Secret to a Good Divorce is the same as a good marriage. And that is to just do this. Just do what is right. This video is for those of you ladies who are right now, when you're watching this, having to go through the pain of a divorce. It's not a one-off, 1 second, now it's done. It's walking through a process. And I learned a lot walking through my own divorce. And I've been thinking about talking about this for years. And I decided today's the day. Because if what I went through can help you, then I will put myself out there. And it's not easy to talk about this. I feel a little bit of shame and a little bit of embarrassment that I am divorced. I never thought I would be divorced. But when I feel that way, I have to take a hard look at where is that coming from. Because the enemy, I will tell you ladies, wants to use that, at least in my own life, to paralyze me, to make me feel that guilt and shame so heavy that I shut up. And I am determined to not let him do that for me. So if this video can help even just one of you walk through your divorce more righteously, being more like Yeshua, and ultimately, if you have kids, I think it will help your kids, then I will put myself out there and I will tell you some things about what I learned and what I did. So, I mean, there's so much to say about divorce. Just please remember, I'm trying to keep this short, and it's just on this one topic. It's not about if it's okay and when it's okay and all these things. Also, ladies, I would be very careful about asking for counsel in the comments. There are so many unique situations. I will not counsel people over the internet, so I will not reply. And when you put stuff out there for just, and I mean, so many kinds of people watch my videos. I'm not sure that comments is the right place to go to for counsel. You should be going to people who know you, who know your family, who know your husband, who are walking with you in real life and can meet with you and listen to you and talk with you over several times, not a one-off internet encounter, because we don't know what's going on. So just be careful with that, and putting your, all the dirty details on public social media, I'm not sure is wise. So please be careful, because this will bring out, you're going to want answers. And I'm not sure that myself or the people in the comments can give you all the answers. So the secret to a good divorce is just to do Torah. It really is. Ladies, I was married for, 11 years. And we were in the church, we were Christians. And I came to Torah. And about a year later, found out my husband was having an affair. And he was divorcing me. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried to stop him, and there was no stopping him. So that's the short version of it. When you ladies know this, when you start going through the process of divorce, something awful happens, both from within yourself, your own flesh, and the world, and even Christians, well-meaning Christians, and even Torah keepers want to influence you to sin. They want to influence you to go on the offensive and to be nasty and to act, even in a divorce, the way the world acts in a divorce. And divorce is already a nasty, horrible, ugly, horrendous thing. But the world, the culture we live in, makes it even worse. It turns into the most selfish, greedy, backstabbing, get what's mine and then some kind of a thing. And I realized very early on I was not going to go into all that nonsense. It was already bad enough realizing what my husband had done and realizing that I was going to be a divorced person and all this stuff. I didn't need to add any more ugly to it. It was already bad. But I had the influence of the world and my own flesh whispering in my ear, to do this and do that. And I determined I would squish all of that right away. I was determined to do this. There were 2 things that I sinned against my husband, and I wish I had not. And I'm not going to tell you what those 2 things are. I was not unfaithful or anything like that. But I don't see any good in telling you those 2 things. No good comes from that. Because again, I already repented of those things to him and to the Father. And I even told my kids those 2 things. Nobody else needs to know. It's just done. Because when I dwell, here's what you'll learn, ladies. When you dwell on things, anybody, we should all learn this lesson. When we dwell on our past sins, the enemy uses it to paralyze us. He will try to stop us from going about our kingdom work. And I'm determined to not let him do that. I will always regret the things I did wrong. And the consequences come from those things. But, so I tell you that just so you know that I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect. So I wanted to get that out there right away. I do have a couple regrets. By and large, though, and I don't say this to brag, I say it because it's all glory to him, because he opened my eyes to Torah. And he gave me a deep, deep conviction to do what is right, because I believe what is written in this book. So by and large, my divorce went good, I guess. It sounds so strange to say it like that. And the divorce is still going good, because I'm still divorced. We're still raising our kids together. And I have had so many people throughout the years tell me, wow, you're handling it really good. Wow, look at how you guys do that. Look at how you've handled this. It's amazing. How did you do that? I've never seen anyone do it so well before. I've never seen anyone handle it so well before. I've never seen, some people have never seen kids as okay as my kids. Even my attorney, when it was all done, because the attorney walked through this with me for months. When it was all done, he said, Amy, you are the smartest client I've ever had. Now, ladies, do you really think I'm the smartest client he's ever had? I don't have any legal training. I don't know anything about divorce. I never even thought about divorce. How can I be the smartest divorce client he's ever had? And he wasn't young. He's had thousands of divorce clients. It wasn't that I was smart. It's that doing this makes you wise. Do you see? So please don't think I'm tooting my own horn, because I'm not. I was stunned when he told me that. But I was determined to obey and follow this. And it's all glory to him. If he had not opened my eyes to Torah about a year before, I think I would have completely fallen apart. I would have sinned. I might have walked away from my faith. I was believing a lot of the lies that the mainstream church says, that if you're a dutiful, submissive wife and you do all the things, that your marriage is going to be perfect. And it's not like that always. But I learned to not listen to man so much, but to read and do and believe this. And this says that bad things happen. So when this first started to go down, I told some close friends, and so many people very quickly sent me Psalm 37. They're like, Amy, if you need a passage to meditate and dwell on, it's got to be Psalm 37. And they sent me other ones too, but this one came up the most. Now, this chapter, you guys probably all know it. I think what most of us love about this chapter when we're going through a hard time or persecution, especially if it's coming from another human, is we love the parts about they're going to get their dues and I'm going to get my reward. We love those parts. We love to think about the vindictiveness of what's going to happen to the bad guy and all the good things that are going to happen to the good guy. That's what we love to get from this passage. But man, I'm telling you, ladies, the first time I read this passage after this happened, the Father opened my eyes immediately to the best nuggets in here. if you're going through a divorce, the best parts in here are not the justice and the reward for the righteous. It's these parts. I'm going to just show you a couple of them, okay? So verse 3, do good. Befriend faithfulness. Verse 7, wait patiently. Verse 8, don't be angry, forsake wrath. Don't fret, it only leads to evil. 8 is the secret sauce, verse 8. 21, be generous and give. 23, the one who delights in his way. Verse 27, turn away from evil, do good. 31, the law of Yehovah is in his heart, his steps do not slip. Verse 34, wait for Yah and keep his way. And there's probably more. Those are the highlights. But you see, what I needed to hear was, don't sin, do what is right. Wait on Yah. But the reward for the righteous only comes if I don't sin. Especially verse 8, don't be angry, it only makes you sin. I had to cling, because boy was I angry. And I had every right to be angry. And I'm still angry sometimes. But if I sit and I stew in that anger and I let that anger consume me and drive my emotions, drive my actions, drive my thoughts, it's going to make me sin. So I choose to take those anger thoughts captive when they sneak up, and I squish them. And even if I have those feelings, how I act is not determined by my feelings. This is what we teach our kids, right? You might feel one way, you have to act right. It's no different for us ladies going through a divorce where, and I guess I'm mostly talking especially when sort of like we've been wronged. So again, every situation is different. But the world will want you to sin. You will want to sin in all kinds of ways throughout this divorce process. And the bottom line reason is we feel like our flesh tells us because we're a victim, we get all this stuff. And because he's the wrong, the bad guy, he should get nothing. And it's not really our job to determine that. So part of a divorce is splitting all the stuff, splitting the money, and then child custody. And it's awful. It's just awful. I pray none of you have to go through it. And so in that, all that splitting of everything, it can get nasty. So our legal system here in the U.S. has a way of dealing with this, right? There's divorce laws, and there's and I recommend you do get an attorney to help follow the laws. There's a lot of laws about divorce, and there's a lot of laws about child custody and split up parents and everything. For the most part, we have to follow those laws, I guess, is what I'm saying. And sometimes you might not like it, but a lot of these laws are based on Torah. A lot of our government systems are based on Torah. Now, in Torah days, in the days of Israel, disputes would be taken to a judge sitting by the gate, and I think those judges had sort of divine download as to how to discern what is what. I don't think our modern day judges have divine download. But we're at least stuck in this system. And for the most part, the system says everything gets split 50-50. Or whatever your system in your state says and things. So this is just, it's hard to talk about, but if you're finding yourself, and this is what people do. This is what people do in a divorce, some of them. They start trying to hide the money. They start trying to hide assets. They want to keep more than their fair share, I guess. And that's not right. It's not Torah. If the law that we're under says you have to split it 50-50 and make it known what is there, then that is what you have to do. I recommend, because there's so many unique situations, that you surround yourself with 2 or 3 close friends who love and obey the Torah and who know Yeshua the way you know Yeshua, and ask them to counsel you as you walk through this. I mean, your attorney should be counseling you too, but he doesn't know Torah, or she doesn't know Torah. So surround yourself with a core group who are going to know all the dirty details. You don't have to tell the dirty details of your divorce to everyone. But this core group, ask them to help you stay on the straight and narrow path of doing what is right and doing what is fair. Because when you're walking through this, I can vouch for this, you will be angry, you will be grieving, you will have literally so much stress it creates a brain fog, and it creates an amnesic effect where you're forgetful. And all of these things combined, not to mention just the deep wounds and hurt in your heart, you can very easily go to the left or the right and do wrong. So it's very helpful to have a core group of people around you who can see things maybe more clearly than you can, and ask them honestly, tell me if I'm going this way or that way. Whatever the reason, if I'm forgetful about this or that, or if I'm, being vengeful, whatever the reason, help me do right. Because ladies, when I look back on my divorce, as awful as it was, I would do it the same. I would be upfront and honest about all the stuff and all the splitting of the stuff, and I wouldn't be greedy with the stuff. Now, do you have to give more than what is fair? No. Just do what is fair. And there are so many situations in which you're going to feel like you're not getting what is fair. And if you can fix that, I guess legally, then fix it. But sometimes it just doesn't go that way. And I'm not saying that everything went the way I thought it should have gone. Some things didn't go the way I thought that they should have gone. But how much do you fight? Because then you go back to the rest of the promises here that justice will be carried out. It just might not be carried out in the time you want, in the way you want. And most of all, ladies, justice is not to be carried out by us. And I guess this is for men too. If you're going through a divorce, it's not always our job to do the justice. Especially now, because we're not under a Torah government. The Father will do justice. You do what you can, but at some point you have to let some things just be. Commit yourself to doing what is right throughout the whole process. One thing that motivated me is that I knew people were watching me. I was still somewhat new to Torah, and a lot of my Christian friends were shocked that I was doing this Torah stuff. And I knew they were watching. How is Amy going to handle this? So I determined to handle it rightly. And I didn't know where else to look at what was right other than the Word of God. If we believe that doing right brings blessings and doing wrong brings curses, but then I hear Torah keepers saying, well, this is an exception. I can do wrong here because he da. And that's where you're going to get into trouble. And this, I should have maybe said this sooner. When you feel like you can do what you want because of the wrongness that someone else did, and in this case, your ex, you're going to get yourself into all kinds of sin and trouble. How we act and what we do is not dependent on other people. And this is why it's the same for marriage as it is for a good divorce. To have things turn out, I guess, the best, you're going to do what is right all the time, every time, whether the other person deserves it or not. My ex didn't deserve what is fair, and on and on and on and on. But that's for God to take care of someday. How I act is not dependent on him. That's what you have to get into your head, and that's what Psalm 37 tells us. You do what is right because it is right. And that is the secret to the best divorce you can possibly have, I guess. And it's definitely the secret to the best marriage that you can possibly have. So if we talk all the time that doing right brings blessings and doing wrong brings curses. But if you make an exception during your divorce, then I would say you don't really believe the Torah. Because it's easy to say, oh, I'm going to do what is right. I'm going to keep Sabbath and I'm going to get all the blessings. It's easy to do Torah when it's easy. But when someone has deeply wounded you and you're going through something terrifying with huge implications, like money is no small thing. I get it. Definitely child custody, no small thing. But you can't make an exception and say, well, I can sin here because this is a special circumstance. I don't see that anywhere in Scripture, other than, there are some exceptions to things. But by and large, you have to do what is right. I'm looking at my notes. So, how did things turn out for me? I guess I could say I had the best divorce I could have had. Of course, I wish I weren't divorced. I wish none of this had ever happened. But looking back, as far as how I reacted and my choice to do right, I would do it all over again. I cannot tell you all the good things, how faithful the Father has been to me throughout the whole process and continues to be. I will tell you some of the blessings that have come for me, some of the way, but I'm not saying that this is a promise that this will happen for you. We can't put God to the test and say, if I do what is right, then you owe me this, or you owe me what Amy got. That's not how it works. Something more, again, something else bad might happen for you. But here's what happened for me. I didn't even want to get divorced. I'm still divorced. But I did, as far as child custody goes, I have the kids every Sabbath, and I have the kids for every single feast. I think that's pretty amazing. And here's how amazing it is. When we sat down with the people at the court who do that, that's what we asked for. I wanted the kids every Sabbath. He wanted the kids every Sunday. And do you think it's any coincidence that he and I agreed on that? Or do you think that was God intervening in him to make this whole situation? That's what I think. I think when we walk out what is right, God is going to be doing 100 things behind the scenes. And see, we do not have to take matters into our own hands. He can change hearts and make people say and do what he wants them to say and do. And so the lady running this, she said, I have never, ever heard of an arrangement like this. Ever. And we said, so? This is what we want. And she said, okay. And that's how it's been ever since. So I have the kids all the feasts. I have the kids all the Sabbaths. I will say one way in which I was weak, and I would challenge you to not be weak in this way, is I listened to the world, especially the Christian world, and I read lots of articles about all the horrible things that happen to kids after a divorce. Now, I do believe that kids from divorced families don't do as well as kids from awesome married families, of course. But it's not all doom and gloom. And your kids are your kids. They're not someone else's kids. And they're not necessarily part of that numerator of that stat that you're reading about in that article. And really, they're God's kids. And because you know they're God's kids and you know that you're going to raise them up in Torah with Yeshua as the focus, your kids are not in the same situation at all as just any old divorced kid. Because you're raising your kids in the whole Word of God. my kids are fine. I'm not going to go into that a whole lot because I just don't want to bring them into it a whole lot, but they're totally fine. And they love their dad. And they spend a lot of time with their dad. And it has turned out, and this is a hard one for me to say because I think that to take children away from their parent is an utterly immoral thing to do. I have strong feelings about that. So if there's any part of the divorce that I struggle with, it's every time I say goodbye to my kids for a night. So pray for me in that, because you would think that would be easier, but I guess you get used to it, but it doesn't get easy. And yet my kids are okay. So I guess I struggle, like it hurts my heart every time I say goodbye to them, but they're okay. They're excited to see their dad, and then they're excited to come home, and they're not deeply wounded and crying and all this other nonsense that I expected, because that's what I was reading about in the world. So just don't read that junk. Read the Word of God and know that, we were always taught that the only way a kid can be okay is if he has a mom and a dad all the time. Well, a lot of kids don't have a mom or a dad. Some kids lose their mom or dad, to all kinds of terrible sicknesses and illnesses. So that can't be the secret sauce to having a well-adjusted, Yah-fearing kid, right? So, and that's the other promises of Psalm 37. He will make it okay, but you must walk in righteousness. It's going to be so easy, ladies, to focus on the junk that the other person did. And this is for the men, too. If your wives are the ones filing divorce and all this other stuff, or they cheated, I mean, you have to think about that with the junk that they did to some degree. But what they did should not affect you walking in obedience. And let me look at my notes just to make sure. I guess that's all I wanted to say. This video is already too long. Just do what is right every time, no matter what other people around you are doing to you, no matter how hurtful they are. And part of doing right is forgiveness, and that might be a whole nother video. But don't forget about that part. But you don't have to wait until you have forgiven to do what is right. During every little decision, every little step, every little motion that you file while you're going through this ugly divorce, you do what is right every time. And people will see it. Yah sees it. I mean, can you do anything in secret against him? If this is the problem and why we really sin, is we think we have these secret little compartments that he doesn't know about. Oh, if I do this, the people won't know, so I'll get away with it. Really? Are you getting away with anything? He knows all, and the Father sees all. You can't hide it from him. So if you want to claim some of the promises of 37, you better claim all of Psalm 37. All of it. Most importantly, the parts that are dependent on you. Most of this is out of our control. Justice that comes from Yahweh, out of my control. Rewards that come from my walking in righteousness, those come from him too. The part that I control is how I act today. Every decision I make today. So that's my encouragement for you. I'm sorry you're having to go through this. I really, really am. But do it the best. Have the best divorce you can, I guess. So that's it. Bye, sisters.